No player is more important for the Jets franchise than Zach Wilson. What does the second-year quarterback need to do for 2022 to be considered a success? We'll discuss today on the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Tuesday, September 6th, 2022, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you for making this show your first listen or first watch every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. I'd like to begin the show with a big shout out to subscribers to this podcast. And to join that group, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button wherever you are watching or listening. You'll never miss an episode. You'll get notifications as new episodes are posted. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps the channel out, and it helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Well, it is game week. I hope you had a great long weekend. The Jets will play Baltimore this weekend. There's a question. Will they have their starting quarterback? Zach Wilson's status at this point, a little up in the air, but we know we're going to have him at some point early in the season. The injury he suffered in the preseason opener against the Eagles should not keep him out for long in the regular season. If he misses this game, Joe Flacco will start, but we can expect to see Wilson sooner rather than later this season. And there's no question about it. Zach Wilson's the most important player on the franchise. In fact, I'm of the mindset that, if he can practice this week, he should be in the lineup. I know some people are worried, or you're putting him at greater risk. Well, that's why you trust your doctors. If the doctors decide that he's at too great a risk, then of course you sit him. But if he can practice fully this week, I think he should be on the field. If the doctors don't feel that he's at inordinate risk, I think he should be on the field. And I think we'll have a better idea tomorrow, because the way the NFL schedule typically works for most teams is Tuesday during the week tends to be a day off. For the players, the coaching staff tends to put the game plan together on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday are the days in practice where the game plan really gets implemented. Friday a little bit, and then you head into the weekend and you head into your games. So tomorrow is the first real day of practice where they begin installing the game plan. And if you get the injury report, and every team is required to send out a report on which injured players practiced and how long they practiced. So if you see Zach Wilson was a full participant in practice tomorrow, it's a good sign that he's probably going to be playing in this game. But even if he doesn't, obviously important player for the franchise. Big year for Zach Wilson, I think, based on what happened as a rookie. And today, I'm going to talk about some things I'm going to look for this season as we evaluate whether 2022 is a successful year for Zach Wilson. Now, for me, number one is probably efficiency. And what do I mean by that? Well, I think sometimes we tend to put too much stock into one statistic. You may obsess over completion percentage, you may obsess over yards per completion, but these don't tell the full story. A quarterback can complete 80% of his passes, and I've seen this happen in the past, but they only average like 5 yards. So if you're doing that, it's a sign that you're probably attempting a lot of very low upside, high percentage passes. You're probably dumping it off to your running backs a lot. You're throwing lots of screens. You can complete 80% of your passes, but if you're only averaging like 5 yards per attempt, you're not really helping the team because you're not really moving the ball very effectively. Whereas a low completion percentage, but a high yards per attempt, a high yards per completion, this is maybe you're attempting more difficult passes, but you're helping your team out. So there's always this balance. And you also want to protect the football, which is something Zach Wilson did not do well in the early stages of last season, but did do pretty well in the late stages of last season. However, the efficiency still wasn't there late last season. So if you want to look at the numbers, and it's interesting because of the time Zach Wilson's injury happened, it's almost an even split between the early part of the season, the September-October part, And then the late part, which is really the weekend after Thanksgiving, he returned to the lineup against the Houston Texans and then played the rest of the season. So if you look at the early part of the season, he started 6 games at the beginning of the season. He threw 9 interceptions in those 6 games. He returned, played the final 7, only threw 2 in the final 7 after throwing 9 in the first 6 games. And beyond that, he actually did not throw an interception in any of his final 5 games. So Zach Wilson really protected the football a lot better. But this goes back to what I'm talking about, efficiency, is that you can't view these numbers in isolation, because there were ways in which Zach Wilson actually got less efficient after returning, even though the turnovers went down. Before the injury, he was completing about 57% of his passes, averaging around 6.4 yards per attempt. Numbers that really are not that good. But after he returned from injury, he only completed, that dropped to about 54% completion percentage. So his completion percentage dropped about 2 to 3 points, and he averaged only 5.7 yards per attempt. So pretty significant drop from the 6.4 he was averaging pre-injury, and 6.4 wasn't great to begin with. And that to me shows that maybe Zach Wilson was being overprotective with the football late in the season. And it's the balance, because I feel like a quarterback who throws no interceptions, unless it's like Tom Brady, who just like always makes the right decision, but a quarterback who throws no interceptions, he's probably not being aggressive enough. And I think that that's a fair criticism of Zach Wilson late in the season. Now, there are some caveats in here, obviously, especially in football. It's difficult to isolate one player's statistics in the context of the game, in the context of the defense you're facing, in the context of the teammates you've got. And to be fair, while Zach Wilson's efficiency numbers were better early in the season, so were the caliber of his teammates, especially those last 3 games. The Jets really were not putting an NFL caliber receiving group on the field with Zach Wilson. And also, in fairness, he did play pretty well against Tampa Bay when he did not have an NFL caliber receiving group. So these are things to keep in mind. But I think the broader picture there is that, Zach Wilson was not that efficient of a quarterback last season. And it got worse as the season went on. And even as he was protecting the football better, the efficiency was not going up. And I'm not saying this to rehash, to relitigate what happened last season. I'm not saying this to criticize Zach Wilson. I'm making a broader point here about what we're looking for going forward. Is that you want efficient football. And I do think that there were points, especially late last season, where maybe Zach Wilson wasn't aggressive enough. I see people say, there's one week where Zach Wilson throws a bunch of interceptions. Like I remember the New England game, people are saying, oh, he's forcing too many balls into traffic. Then a few weeks later, Wilson did not take a deep shot, I remember, and people made the comment, well, a couple of weeks ago, you were saying he was being too aggressive. Now you're saying you don't want him to be aggressive. Well, it's not that simple. You have to find the right balance, and that's why playing quarterback in this league is so tough. You have to pick your spots to make your move. You have to pick your spots to be aggressive. And, of course, everybody's going to make mistakes. 0 interceptions, I feel like, is maybe a little too passive. Whereas if you're throwing multiple interceptions every game, you're being too aggressive. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no. I think sometimes people oversimplify things. They make it sound like, oh, he's got to be aggressive, or oh, he's got to be really passive. It's not that simple. You have to understand where to take your shots and where to check it down. And I think in the early part of last season, there were moments where Zach really threw the ball deep, in moments where he just should have taken the easy outlet. I mean, especially that New England game week 2, which is part of the growing curve. I mean, I don't want to go too crazy over it. And again, I'm not trying to be like overly critical. I'm talking about what we learned last year in the context of what we can do with it going forward. Now, of course, you have all the normal caveats here. You got second year in the system, got a year under his belt playing NFL defenses. He's had a full off season to study what the other team's tendencies are. So these are reasons to be hopeful for Zach Wilson. But I think the efficiency's clearly got to go up. And I'm not saying Zach Wilson needs to play at Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady level of efficiency, but I think it needs to go up. And the 2 things I look at are completion percentage and yards per attempt, because those are the two that I can look at above all else. Because as I mentioned earlier, completion percentage on its own in a vacuum doesn't tell me a whole lot, but if you combine it with yards per attempt, it kind of gives you an indication of what types of passes a quarterback's trying, whether he's efficient throwing the football. So I'd like to see Zach Wilson get to like the middle of the pack in efficiency and still protect the football better than he did in the first half of the season. I'm not saying I want him to throw more interceptions than he did the second half of the season, because obviously interceptions are bad. Interceptions can change a game. But I don't want him to pass up chances consistently out of fear of throwing an interception. Interceptions are going to happen. And no, you don't want him to be throwing an interception a game the way he was in the first half of the season. But you also don't want him to pass up opportunities out of fear of an interception. And I guess what it comes down to is an interception here or there is not the end of the world. You just don't want it to be a regular occurrence. And you don't want to pass up opportunities because you're trying to protect the football. Because in today's NFL, it's very difficult to win if your quarterback is not making plays. Very difficult to just lean on your defense based on the way the rules are, and you have an offense that avoids mistakes and let your defense make the play that wins the games. It's maybe that was a way to play in the past. It's a tough way to win in today's NFL. So efficiency to me matters. But of course, it's not just about being efficient. The Jets drafted Zach Wilson second overall in 2021. They want him to be a playmaker. And ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, I'll talk about some of the ceiling I'm looking to see out of Zach Wilson in 2022. The beginning of the 2022 NFL season is just 2 days away. We've got Buffalo against the Rams. And if you're a daily fantasy player, maybe you've got Josh Allen throwing for over 320 yards. Maybe you got Matthew Stafford doing it. Maybe you'll pick Cooper Kupp to score more than 0.5 touchdowns. Well, let me tell you about PrizePicks. With using their format, you pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you watch. This includes the NFL, but it also includes the NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NHL, the PGA, college football, college basketball, both men's and women's, soccer, the WNBA, which is in the playoffs. You got esports, you got NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, Euro basketball, cricket, disc golf. Entries can be made up in 60 seconds or less. It's really, really that easy. You have safe and fast withdrawals, and it's currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Just download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON. It's one word with no space, LOCKEDON, at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Thank you again for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. And make sure you check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. Local team experts such as myself and NFL insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network have all combined for one ultimate NFL preview. I take part in the AFC East preview. Search for the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And today on Locked On Jets, we're talking expectations for Zach Wilson this season. Not clear whether Zach's going to be ready to go week 1 against Baltimore, but we are expecting him early in the season. Thank goodness. I don't think any of us really want to see a lot of Joe Flacco this season. I think we want to see Zach on the field, seeing if he can build on his rookie season. What does Zach Wilson need to do this season? I talked about playing efficiently in the first segment, but I feel like it's not enough to play efficient. You want to see that ceiling. When the Jets drafted Zach Wilson last year, ceiling was the word. And I think sometimes we talk about ceiling incorrectly because a lot of the time when we're talking about draft prospects at the quarterback position, ceiling is used as a synonym for arm strength. And, arm strength matters. I'm not going to say it's irrelevant, but I think we tend to overrate the importance of arm strength for a quarterback prospect. And I feel like that's because it's one of the few tangibles with a quarterback. Quarterback's really a position where intangibles come to play, or things that are difficult to evaluate. And as much as it's a physical position, it's really a thinking position. You got to be able to read a defense. You got to be able to get the ball out quickly, distribute it to the right guy. Those things are tough to evaluate. And there's usually a difference between a quarterback's ability to do that on the college level and the NFL level. So it's really tough. Arm strength is something you can evaluate. Of course, Zach Wilson does have a big arm, and he can fit passes into areas where other quarterbacks would struggle. And at BYU, he showed a lot of playmaking ability. We really did not see a ton of playmaking ability from Zach Wilson last year. In fact, there were many instances where he was trying to make plays that he got away with at BYU, where he's breaking the pocket that just did not work in the NFL. So it's going to be a balance. But I do think back to that game against Tennessee, the Jets' first victory of the season, And really through the first 3 quarters of that game, it was a struggle for the Jets offense. Then like the last minute of the third quarter, Zach hit Keelan Cole on a deep pass on kind of a broken play. It just got him going. And he started making plays outside the structure of the play call. And again, it's not much like when we're talking about efficiency, how many chances you take. It's one of those things you have to find the balance for. I can't tell you like Zach Wilson needs to be breaking the pocket on every play because I think he did it too frequently last year. And there were many times where, again, he passed up easier completions at the expense of trying to make the big play. But big plays do need to be on the table for Zach Wilson, I think, if he's going to be a successful quarterback in this league. And I think one of the areas that was a little troubling for Zach last season was that when he was bad, he was really bad. But there weren't many moments where he was spectacular. That Tennessee game, the third quarter, the last minute of the third quarter, that fourth quarter, and then the overtime, because the Jets did play overtime, he was making plays. He looked like a real playmaker. There weren't many other times where he looked like a great playmaker. And I think that's reflected in the fact that last season, if you look at the average NFL passer rating, Zach had one game where he was above it. He had one game where he was in the 97 range. And there were no games where he was in the 100 range. So, Zach's played 12 games start to finish so far in his career. He left the New England game last year injured, missed 4 games in the middle of the season. He has no games yet with a 100 passer rating. By comparison, at this point in his career, Mark Sanchez had 3, Sam Darnold had 4, even Geno Smith had 1. And that was one of my big criticisms at the time of Geno Smith, was that when Geno was bad, he gave you no shot at winning. But when he was good, he was just kind of okay. And that's where Zach's got to elevate his game. And listen, I've been pretty vocal when it comes to Zach about what fans' expectations should be. Because, listen, everybody would love for Zach Wilson to eventually develop into a top 5 quarterback, a top 10 quarterback. But I think we underrate how significant it would be if Zach Wilson was just a credible quarterback, if he was a competent quarterback. We watch Aaron Rodgers every week. We watch Patrick Mahomes. We watch Josh Allen. We watch these, Tom Brady. And we dream of a quarterback like that being on the Jets. And it would be great. And listen, I'm not going to tell you it would not elevate the team. It would elevate the team quite a bit. But I think we underrate the guys who are just credible, the guys who can get it done on a week-to-week basis. And yes, you do need to surround these guys with a better team than maybe a Rodgers has if you're going to win. But it gives you a shot at winning. And for years, the Jets have not had a quarterback who gave them a shot at winning. And if Zach Wilson can develop into a credible quarterback, that gives you a window here, because especially when that quarterback's on a rookie contract, it gives you a shot, because you can build up a good team when you're not paying your quarterback a whole lot of money. That said, you still want to see those moments. So, I'm not expecting Zach Wilson to give me those moments at a Patrick Mahomes level. But you remember that playmaker at BYU. You remember the things that he did. You even remember that Tennessee game. You'd like to see him flash a little bit. You'd like to see some special moments. We saw Zach Wilson show flashes of being a credible quarterback last season. We saw it the second half, even week 1 against Carolina, where he almost led the Jets back. Played well, took some big hits, showed some toughness. We saw it game against the Eagles, where he led the Jets to 3 straight touchdowns to begin that game. We saw it against Tampa Bay, where he didn't do anything spectacular, but he stood firm in the pocket. When he hit that back foot, he was able to make the right read, get the ball where it needed to go. He showed flashes of being a credible quarterback, but you'd still like to see flashes where he shows you the ability to lift his team on the back. Because last year, I think the one time he did that, it was the game against the Tennessee Titans, and never really followed it up with that. So we want to see Zach Wilson play efficient football. We want to see Zach Wilson make the right reads. And on some level, Zach Wilson getting to the middle of the pack is enough. But I'm going to be a little greedy here. I want to see moments. I feel like the threshold for Zach Wilson's success this season is being a middle-of-the-pack type quarterback. Showing he can play in this league, not being an MVP. He's not going to be the MVP of the league this year. He's not going. I just don't think he's. Listen, nobody's going to be happier to be wrong about that than me. Don't get me wrong. I'm rooting for it, but I think realistically, the expectation for Zach Wilson would be a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. But you still want to see those flashes. You want to see the occasional game where he posts the 100 passer rating. Do it. I don't know, 3 times or so, 4 times or so. Give us something to make us believe that even if he's middle of the pack right now, you can get a little bit better than that, because better Zach Wilson is in the long run, the easier it's going to be for the Jets to win games. So that's for me, the number one thing is playing efficient football, as I discussed in the first segment. But the number 2 thing is show us some flashes. Show us the ceiling, because last year the ceiling wasn't super high. Let's get to a higher ceiling. Let's get some of those games where he carries the Jets on the back. Doesn't need to happen every week. Just show it to me occasionally. Of course, to do all these things, though, Zach Wilson needs to stay on the field. And as we close out this Tuesday episode of Locked On Jets, I'll talk about the third expectation I have for Zach Wilson. That's just staying healthy. We'll talk more about that as we continue on this Tuesday episode of Locked On Jets. Of course, the NFL season is beginning this weekend. Thursday night, we got Rams-Bills. Got a good slate of college games on Saturday, and then the main course is on Sunday because the Jets will play the Baltimore Ravens in their opener. And then a few other games. You got Sunday Night Football. I guess that's kind of a good game. And Monday Night Football opens up. You want to make sure you got some good snacks. So let me suggest Built Bar. Let me suggest Built Bar Puffs, even better. If you haven't tried them yet, you're depriving yourselves of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There is a new flavor. Delicious, indulgent cookie dough. It's covered in chocolate. Built has done it again. These are absolutely delicious. If you're a cookie dough fan like I am, you just have to have them. They taste like cookie dough, but they're only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. You should run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It will be the perfect treat. Whether you need a snack for your workout, a late-night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite, Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. You can ditch the calories, the fat, and the sugar. Grab yourself a Built bar. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKEDON15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, it's promo code LOCKEDON15. It's one word with no space. LOCKEDON, number 1, number 5, for 15% off at Built, BUILT.com. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Tuesday. We're talking Zach Wilson, in particular, expectations for Zach Wilson. I've talked about playing efficiently. I've talked about showing a ceiling. But none of these things can happen unless Zach Wilson's on the field. And, when we're talking about injuries, there's only so much a player can do, especially at the quarterback position. I mean, every time you're dropping back, you got 270-pound guys, 300-pound guys, 330-pound guys trying to hit you really hard. Injuries happen at the quarterback position. Hopefully the Jets have built a good enough offensive line around Zach that he can avoid further injuries. And, again, on some level, it's just bad luck. I mean, the injury he suffered in preseason was a non-contact injury, so you can't get on Zach Wilson if he gets for getting hurt. Just like you can't get on Mekhi Becton for getting hurt. But, of course, there is an element that, to be great, you have to be on the field. Zach Wilson did miss 4 games in the middle part of last season. He could miss this opener. He did miss the rest of preseason this year after suffering that injury in the preseason opener against the Eagles. So, I don't know how much of it's on Zach, but he's got to show an ability to stay healthy. And the thing that really sticks out to me is that both major injuries he suffered were kind of avoidable. The injury he suffered against New England, he held the ball for too long. He had a guy open, missed him. Now there was a borderline cheap shot he took on the play, but he held the ball too long there. And then the play against the Eagles, he tried to cut inside. He's on the scramble. He had picked up the yardage he needed for a first down. I understand you're trying to make a play out there, but you also have to, keep self-preservation in mind. Now, in fairness, he did not take a hit, but at the same time, I don't know that Zach Wilson's going to really make a lot of money in this league for his running ability. I think he can be a functional runner. I think occasionally he can, help the Jets in the run game, but he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Josh Allen. He's not the kind of guy who's really going to make the rushing an integral component of his game. So to the extent he can help it, I'd like to see Zach show a little bit more self-preservation. Again, it's not his fault that these 2 injuries have happened, but you'd like to see him avoid situations where an injury becomes more likely. No trying to hurdle guys while you're on the scramble. Just go down, slide down when you're in open when you're in open field and you have guys closing down on you. To the extent he can take care of that, I hope he can take care of it. And beyond that, you just hope that there's better injury luck this year, because to develop this quarterback, to evaluate this quarterback, Zach's got to be on the field. Because I think I speak for most of us. Maybe there's a Flacco fan or two out there. Maybe there's even still a Mike White fan out there. I know Strevler Nation's out there, but we don't need to see Joe Flacco on the field this year. We got a young quarterback we're trying to develop here. We got a second-year quarterback who was drafted 2nd overall a year ago. We got a quarterback who was viewed as a great prospect. We don't need to see anybody else. With all due respect to Strevler Nation out there, with all due respect to The people who loved that game. Well, we all love that game against Cincinnati. All due respect to, the Mike White fans out there. And, I mean, look, if you're a Flacco fan at this point, you must be like somebody who used to be a Ravens fan. Because there's no reason to want to see Flacco on the field otherwise. Unless you're like a Ravens fan who just like decided to follow Flacco to Denver and then to the Jets and to the Eagles last year, back to the Jets. There's really no I can't imagine why anybody would want to see Flacco. So hopefully Zach can stay healthy again. A lot of that's going to be beyond his control. It's going to be his offensive line. It's going to be just kind of luck. But to the extent he can avoid putting himself in danger, you'd like to see it. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. A big shout out once again to subscribers to this podcast. To join that group, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching, and in exchange, you'll get notifications as new episodes are posted. You'll never miss an episode. 5 stars, please, if you're listening on a podcast source. It helps us out. So does giving this episode a big thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.